What could drive a peaceful community into a frenzy of fear and accusation, branding their neighbors witches? Let's turn back the hands of time to the late 17th century, to a small village nestled in the New England region of America. Welcome to Salem, Massachusetts. Salem in the 1690s was a world steeped in strict Puritan beliefs and societal norms. A world where the divine and the supernatural were deeply intertwined with everyday life. It was a place where the fear of the unknown was palpable, and anything out of the ordinary was met with suspicion and dread. At the heart of this society was the church, the pillar that held the community together. Belief in God was not just a matter of faith, but a way of life. The villagers lived in constant fear of God's wrath, and anything that defied the norms of their religion was seen as a direct affront to the Almighty. But in the winter of 1692, something began to stir in Salem. A fear, a hysteria began to take root. It began with strange behaviors exhibited by some young girls in the village. Fits, convulsions, and inexplicable outbursts that seemed to defy all medical reasoning. The villagers looked for answers, and when none could be found in the realm of the natural, they turned to the supernatural. The term witchcraft began to whisper through the community, fueling a frenzy of fear and suspicion. The fear of the unknown, the fear of God's wrath, and the fear of the devil himself began to twist and turn their reality. The lines between sanity and madness, between innocence and guilt, began to blur. The stage was set, the seeds of hysteria were sown. Salem was on the brink of a crisis that would forever scar its history. A crisis that would see neighbor turn against neighbor, friend against friend, all in the name of fear and superstition. And so begins our journey into the heart of Salem's fear, where neighbor turns against neighbor in a frantic hunt for witches. Buckle up, for we are about to dive deep into the dark depths of human fear and irrationality, into the chilling tale of the Salem Witch Trials. In the midst of this hysteria, who were the first to be accused and what fates awaited them, you might ask? The first sparks of accusation fell upon three women: Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba. These women, marked by their outsider status, were easy targets in the fear-ridden village. Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, was known for her quick temper and sharp tongue. Her refusal to conform to societal norms made her an easy scapegoat in the face of fear. Sarah Osborne, on the other hand, hadn't attended church for over a year, making her an object of suspicion. She was also involved in a property dispute with the Putnam family, a powerful clan in the village, further isolating her from the community. Then there was Tituba, an enslaved woman of South American Arawak descent. She stood out due to her different cultural background and practices. Tituba's unique position as a servant in the minister's household also made her susceptible to accusations. The allegations against these women were vague and largely based on hearsay. They were accused of bewitching several young girls, causing them to convulse and hallucinate. Yet despite the lack of concrete evidence, the village was quick to believe these claims, fueling the fire of panic and suspicion. And what awaited these women? A grim fate indeed. They were subjected to harsh interrogations, leading Tituba to confess under duress, further escalating the fear. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, however, vehemently maintained their innocence, but to no avail. Good was eventually hanged and Osborne died in prison awaiting trial. Tituba, after spending over a year in jail, was sold into slavery once more. These women were the first victims of a growing hysteria that would consume Salem. They were the scapegoats, the ones easy to blame, the ones who bore the brunt of a community's fear and suspicion. They were marked as witches, and their lives were forever altered. With the first accusations, the frenzy of the witch trials had begun, and Salem would never be the same. What did it mean to be tried for witchcraft in Salem, and what evidence was deemed sufficient to condemn? In the throes of the Salem witch trials, the concept of justice was held hostage by fear. Trials were conducted in a whirlwind of panic and suspicion, with the accused subjected to a range of absurd and inhumane tests. The crux of the matter was not whether one was guilty, but whether one could survive the ordeal of proving their innocence. The trials themselves were a spectacle of hysteria. The courtroom, a stage for the accusers to spin tales of demonic possession and witchcraft. The accused, powerless against the weight of public fear, were condemned not based on tangible evidence, but on spectral evidence, a concept rooted in superstition, not logic. Spectral evidence, they believed, was the manifestation of the devil's power, seen only by the victim. It was testimony that could not be corroborated, yet it was considered damning. The methods of evidence collection were no less absurd. The infamous touch test was one such method. The victim, in the throes of a fit, would cease their convulsions if touched by the witch who had bewitched them. It was a spectacle, a performance that hinged on the victim's word and the community's willingness to believe. Then there was the witch's teat test, a physical examination to find a mark on the accused's body where their familiar, a demonic creature, would supposedly suckle. Any mole or blemish was enough to stoke the flames of suspicion, and who could forget the swimming test? The accused were bound and thrown into water. If they sank, they were considered innocent, but at the risk of drowning. If they floated, they were deemed guilty, for water, a pure element, was believed to reject servants of the devil. In the name of justice, fear had twisted reason, and the innocent were condemned. The Salem Witch Trials were not a pursuit of truth, but a demonstration of how fear can warp justice, turning neighbor against neighbor, and making a mockery of evidence and reason. What happens when suspicion and fear run rampant, tearing a community apart? The Salem Witch Trials were not merely a series of unfortunate events. They were a cataclysm, a storm of fear and suspicion that rocked the very foundations of the small village. As the trials escalated, the bonds of trust that once held the community together began to crumble. Neighbors turned on neighbors, friends on friends, even family on family. The fabric of society was frayed, and the unity that once defined Salem was replaced by a chilling division. The impact was more than just social. Economically, the trials drained resources with the constant court proceedings and imprisonments. The once thriving village was left in a state of stagnation, the fear of accusation stifling any semblance of progress. The fields were left untended, businesses shuttered, and homes abandoned as the trials consumed the community's energy and attention. The psychological toll was indescribable. Imagine living in constant fear, always looking over your shoulder, afraid that a misplaced word or a misunderstood action could lead to an accusation of witchcraft. The trials bred a climate of paranoia that seeped into every aspect of life. The laughter of children was replaced by hushed whispers, the camaraderie in the taverns by suspicious glances. Salem was a village under siege, not by an external enemy, but by an internal one: fear. And then, as abruptly as they started, the trials ended. But the damage was done. The community was left in ruins, a ghost of its former self. The unity that once defined Salem was gone, replaced by a lingering suspicion and mistrust. The trials had not just taken lives, they had ripped apart the social fabric, leaving a wound that would take generations to heal. In the aftermath of the trials, the once close-knit community was a shell of its former self, marred by loss and regret. The trials were a grim reminder of the destructive power of fear, a lesson that echoes through the ages, a testimony of a time when the line between reason and hysteria was blurred and a community was held captive by its own fear. What can we learn from the Salem Witch Trials, a dark chapter in our history? This question invites us to delve into the heart of this harrowing tale, to wrestle with the complexities of human nature and societal constructs that led to such a horrifying spectacle of fear and injustice. One of the most profound lessons we can glean from the Salem Witch Trials is the power of fear. In the face of uncertainty, fear can become a potent force, driving individuals and even entire communities to act in ways that defy reason and compassion. The residents of Salem allowed their fear of the unknown, their fear of the other, to cloud their judgment, resulting in a wave of hysteria that engulfed the entire village. But fear is not the only actor in this tragic play. Justice, or rather the lack thereof, plays a pivotal role. The witch trials showcased a gross miscarriage of justice, where mere suspicion was treated as damning evidence and individuals were condemned without a fair trial. It's a sobering reminder of the importance of due process and the rule of law, principles that form the bedrock of our modern judicial system. And then there's the concept of community, a term that typically evokes a sense of belonging and unity. However, as the Salem Witch Trials demonstrate, community can also be a fragile construct, easily fractured by distrust and paranoia. The trials tore apart the fabric of Salem, pitting neighbor against neighbor in a chilling display of suspicion and betrayal. As we delve into these reflections, we realize that the Salem Witch Trials are more than just a dark chapter in our past. They are a mirror reflecting our own fears, our own sense of justice, our own communities. They serve as a stark reminder of our potential for both irrationality and cruelty, but also our capacity for learning, growth, and change. As we look back on the Salem Witch Trials, we are reminded of the power of fear, the importance of justice, and the fragility of community. let's not forget the lessons they hold for us today.